Welcome students. In this topic, we will learn about fillet Tee joint on 10 mm thick MS plates in overhead position using SMAW process.
Objectives.
At the end of this topic, you will be able to select appropriate electrodes for tack welding and welding process. Prepare and set plates in T-joint in overhead position. Tack weld. T-joint in overhead position using SMAW. Now let us look at the tools required for a fillet T-joint on a 10 mm thick MS plate in overhead position by SMAW process. Steel rule, scriber, prick punch, ball peen hammer, flat file, bench vise, tri-square, tongs, chipping hammer, steel wire brush, electrode cable and earth cable, electrode holder, electrode, personal protective equipment, SMAW welding plant machine and their setup accessories, C-clamp. Now let us look the pre-welding preparations for fillet Tee joint on a 10 mm thick MS plate in overhead position using SMAW process. Tack the weld pieces at both ends of the T-joint in flat positions. Tack the weld pieces at outside edges to avoid starting defects. Set the weld at overhead position and adjust its height. Connect the electrode holder to the DC machine. Keep the electrodes ready for each run. For root run, use 3.15 mm electrode. And 110 amps current. For second and third run, use 3.15 mm electrode and 110 amps current. We have seen the pre-welding preparations. Now let us look at the welding process of fillet Tee joint on a 10 mm thick MS plate in overhead position using SMAW process. Start the bead from the left side. Use a 30-degree work angle of the vertical plate. Work angle is the angle between the electrode and the job surface. Maintain a short arc at all times. Remove the slag from the bead using a chipping hammer. Clean with a wire brush. Deposit the third bead. Remove the slag from the bead using a chipping hammer. Clean with a wire brush. When multi-passes are used, the second pass should be placed between the first pass and the vertical plate so that the second bead overlaps the first pass by about 2/3 of its width. The third bead should cover the top horizontal plate and about 2/3 of bead 2. The leg length L of the weld should be equal. Now, we will look at the important points to follow for a fillet Tee joint on a 10 mm thick MS plate in overhead position using SMAW process. While welding in the overhead position, keep the puddle flat and small. When the molten metal becomes too fluid, whip your electrode away quickly from the crater. and allow the metal to solidify. Do not attempt to deposit too much weld metal at one time. Remove the slag from the weld and inspect the joint for surface and external defects. Spatters. Lack of fusion. Uneven ripples. Lack of penetration. Recap.
In this topic, you have learned to deposit root run on fillet T joint in overhead position, control the molten pool when welding in overhead position, manipulate the electrode angle for a multi-run weld in overhead position, inspect the weldment for surface defects.